So if all are fine, we will go ahead with that. So you can let me know your opinion in the chat box. Okay. So basically, since your internals are starting, lab internals, mid exams. So we are thinking to cover alternative day classes. If everyone is okay, it's fine. Otherwise, we'll go ahead with our regular Wednesday and Friday's session. So it depends on your interest. If you guys are interested, we will cover a few more topics. Otherwise, it's as per your wish. Okay. Please put your responses in chat box. Based on your response, we will plan. Like alternative day classes, up to what day you want. I want the end day also. Like I thought we'll cover up to 11th, 11th or 12th, Friday, Jan 12th. So we can cover Friday one session, then Saturday, Saturday one session, not Saturday, Monday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll be getting 3 to 4 sessions if we go in that order, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll get 4 more sessions. That is 5th, 8th, 10th, and 12th. People are having internals next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's what after the anyway, it's the classes will be on the evening, right? So we can cover Tuesday evening, we can conduct, then Wednesday evening and Friday evening, correct? So I think that dates won't trouble you because anyway it will be in the evening. You'll be completing your internals, and after your internals, we are keeping. So I'll just mention my dates. You can just reply on that. 8, 10, 12. Including today's. We can start. Okay. So what are the topics we covered in the last session? I think I discussed a started collection framework, that is hash set, Arraylist, and hashmap introduced. And I think I spoke about the importance of approaching the problem in multiple ways based on the time complexity. So I think we discussed about this distinct element problem, right, in the array, right? So what was the question? Find the unique, not unique, distinct elements. Okay, there is one more question in model which you can attempt. That is unique elements. So there is a slight difference between distinct elements and unique elements, correct? So here I spoke about 3 different approaches. One is brute force approach, right? So where you will use the for loop and keep on checking for the element that is not a distinct, right? So whenever the flag value is true, we will print that value. Another approach was to sort the array, then check the whether there is a consecutive repeated elements, right? So if it is not, we will print it. If it is there is a repeated element, we will ignore it, right? Then there was one more approach which I told you using hash set. right? So hash set advantages, it doesn't allow duplicate elements. It only store the unique elements. So every time you add the elements into the hash set, you check the flag value. If the flag value is true, then we print that element. Otherwise, we won't print it because this add method will return false whenever there is a duplicate item trying to be added into the hash set. So hash set won't allow to store the duplicate elements. So one more approach I told you using hash map. I think we faced some slight issue. What was that is, I was trying to print the value actually, but we have to print the key. So hash map is a key value pair, right? So what we are doing here, we are inserting the elements of the array one by one. So every time, suppose take this example, array size is 5. These are the elements 2, 1, 3, 4, 1. Okay. So here we are using the put function of the hash map. So what does it do? Associate the specified value with the specified key. So num is the element value, that is 2, and we are initially this as there are no elements in the hash map, we have to check if there is a default value, that is 0. We have to fetch that 0, then do the +1 to it. So get or default is very important method. Suppose if I delete this and try to use only result dot get, teacher dot into, because the return value is null, right? You can observe here, as there are no elements in the hash map as of now, we are trying to fetch the value from the array, correct? Which is the first value is 2, as 2 doesn't have any value. Here 2 is acting like a key, and for that 2 there is no associated value, and we're trying to get that value and do +1 to it. So obviously, as there is no value for the key 2, it will return null. Since we are not handling it, we are getting this exception. So whenever hash map is empty, it's always safer side to use result dot get or default. So what is that our key? That is num and 0. So 0 indicates the initial value. You can set any value here. We are not facing an issue because as the initially the hash map is empty, for the associated 2, since there is no value for the key 2, we fetch 0 and do +1 to it, correct? Then when we are keep on doing this, basically we are trying to store the key and value pairs. Then one more for loop we are using, and I told you how to print the hash map values. This is the syntax: map dot entry. You have to mention the parameters that hash map is accepting. Both of them are integers, integer key and integer value. M indicates the object of the hash map. Then this is the, index of the hash map. Result is the actual hash map. Result dot entry set. So what does entry set do? It returns a set view of the mapping contained in this map. So as you already know the definition of set, set doesn't allow the duplicates. So when we are trying to print the key values, we will only get the unique keys. So there won't be any repeated values for the keys, right? So that's why we are getting the data in the distinct values. The one difference between this hash set and hash map, this approach is, here we are getting the data in the sorted order, because we are trying to store the key value pairs. Internally, it sorts them in the ascending order. So this is one difference. Sometimes if they are telling you to print the distinct elements in the ascending order, you can use hash map. And if they're telling to print them in the original order, then you can use hash set. Because in hash set, what we do is we keep on adding the element in that order. So we don't sort the data, whereas hash map internally sorts the data. So that difference you should be carefully knowing. Otherwise, your test case won't match. Both of them are printing the distinct elements. But the difference is hash set will print them in the original order, whereas hash map will print them in the sorted order. Okay. And what is that I'm printing here? M dot get key. The reason why we are printing key is here our values are acting like a key. 2, 1, 3, 4 are acting like a key. And whenever there is a duplicate key, we are ignoring that. So 1 is duplicated here, we are ignoring it. So we'll get only 1, 2, 3, 4 as the answer. But this test case won't match for the question that I have put in the model because this is printing in the ascending order. As per the model question, you have to print the output like this only. 2, 1, 3, 4 only. In this order only because the keys are inserted in that order. 1 we have to ignore. So in order to match our test case in the model, the approach that will work is this because this will maintain the relative order of the elements. Here it doesn't internally sort the values, but whereas the hash map internally sorting the key values. So get key, right? So returns the key corresponding the entry. So it one by one it returns the key value. And what does put do? So it helps us to insert the element into the corresponding key and value pair. If the map previously contained a mapping for the key, the old value is replaced. Associates a specified value with the specified key. So here our number is acting like a key and this 1 plus 1 we are doing is acting like a value. So for simple problem, one problem, we have multiple approaches. So you should be knowing all the different approaches that is possible. Then only you'll be able to understand the requirement of the test cases. Okay. Let's continue this and somebody asked me one question, so I'll just cover that. Trailing zeros. Okay, so there is one important question in your, I think, an hacker rank smart interview primary question. So people are trying different approaches, but obviously, as I told you, time complexity errors, TLA error will be the problem there. So for this particular question, there are multiple approaches. Again, what is the approach that will work for this hacker rank question is that we are going to discuss. Take a number. Right. So what is the question is, you have to write given a number n. We have to find factorial of a number. Then find the number of trailing zeros in that output, in that factorial value. Right. For example, if you take 4 factorial, what is 4 factorial? 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, right? How much? 24. So here, as it is ending by 24, there are no trailing zeros, right? You take 5 factorial, 5 into 2 into 1 is equal to 120, right? Here, there is one trailing zero, right? As you can see, there is one trailing zero. Similarly, if you keep on entering the random values, if you take 10 factorial, it ends with 2 trailing zeros, correct? In that way, given a number, you have to find out total number of trailing zeros, correct? And the factorial output. How many zeros are there in the end of the given number? That is after taking the factorial. So for this, there are many approaches, but if you think about the basic approach that we all always learned using factorial, that will not work because of the time complexity. Okay, so the approach, what is the best approach for this? I'm going to tell you. So those who had tried it, those who have got errors, you can follow this approach and try it. Let us take some value, or you can say in count. Because initially we want that count, right? Use a single loop. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll try to store count equal to count plus equal to n by 5. Very simple approach this is. Again, this all these approaches, only when you explore and learn, you will get to know. So let us give the input 4. So for, as I told, 4 factorial, there is no trailing 0. So let us give the input as 5. Here we're getting 1. Let us give the input as 10. So for 10, we are getting the number of trailing zeros are 12. So let us verify. 10 factorial is, what is 10 factorial? 362,880. As you can see, the number of trailing zero is 2. So you need to understand this approach. Okay. Here, why I'm dividing every time by 5. So initially, whatever the number I'm entering until it is greater than 0. Okay. So we are finding the count, initial count by 0, then count plus n by 5. Okay. So we are dividing that number by 5. And whatever the result that we are getting, count plus n by 5. Since it is an integer value, we are taking the integer value, ignoring the decimal values. Then we are dividing n by 5. Keep on looping this. So if you trace this, the reason why you have to do by n by 5, you will get to know. You will get the clarity. Why? Because the reason is, a number in factorial, basically. The factorial given number. Right? What happens is, every multiple of 5 contributes trailing 0. And what we are doing in the loop, and in loop what we are doing, we are counting multiples of 5, basically. How many multiples of 5? How many multiples of 5 are present in the given number, right? So if you take any factorial, for example, if you take 10 factorial, right? Or if you take 5 factorial. So there is a, how many numbers, how many multiples are, which are divided by 5, basically. So in a given number, every multiple of 5 contributes to trailing 0, right? If the number is a factorial value, 5 factorial is 5 into 4 into 3 into 1, right? So how many times, a number is divisible by 5 in that particular given factorial? So in this case, there is only one number, right, which can divide completely 5. So that we are counting. Similarly, if you take 10, what is that you will get? 10 into 9 into 8 into, in that way, right? So 10 is divisible by 5 and 5 is divisible by 5. So we'll get 2 counts. So we say that 2 is the actual count for the trailing zeros. So basically this logic is a bit difficult to understand, but it is the most easiest one in terms of time complexity. Understood? The reason is, if the number, we are finding the factorial of a given number, in that number, we are trying to find out the multiples of 5. How many times a given number, if I divide by 5 every time, how many times I'll get the complete division. So we say that that number contributes to trailing 0. So in this loop, what we are trying to count, how many times a number is divisible by 5, and that we are adding into count. Okay, so obviously, if the number is divisible by 5, you will get 1 here. So initial count is 0, 0 plus 1, 1. So if you take for 10 as the example, its count is 0, 0 plus 10 by 5 will get 1. Then 9 by 5, it won't divide completely. So we won't include that, correct? While n is greater than 0, count equal to count plus n by 5. So 9 by 5 is nothing but, correct? So initially what is 10 by 5, then we'll divide n equal to n by 5. So this becomes 5, correct? Then count equal to count plus pi by 5. So that is 1 again. So our overall count becomes 2, correct? So in simple approach, what we're trying to do here is finding the multiples of 5 to find the trailing zeros. If you want to put it in a simple word, zeros, find the multiples of 5 in the given number and increment the count. And finally, print that count as the number of trailing zeros. Got it? So this approach is the best way to calculate the trailing zeros. So somebody asked me this. I hope you understood. So this approach you follow, and obviously it won't be this much simple. And in HackerRank, they are giving number of test cases. So you need to add one more loop, add how many number of test cases, for how many numbers you are finding the trailing zeros. So you need to read one more value, correct? So this, before this, you need to read one more value, int t equal to sc dot next int, then while, one more while you have to put, while t minus minus greater than 0. Inside this, you have to do all. So definitely, this will help you to match the test case. So this is the actual question that was asked in the Smart Edu primary. So try to do this there, check if it works, and as per the test case, if there is any modification is required, you try to do it there. Okay. This is one question I wanted to discuss. We'll go to the next one. One conversion. This is also very important because last week there was assessment test where they asked a simple integer to binary conversion. So those who could remember the library file, they used it directly and they matched the test case. So it was 30 marks question, simple question. Okay. So let us take a number. Right. So suppose if I want to convert a given integer number to binary, correct? So what is that we need to do? So let us declare a variable string bin. So I'm making it as a string library, string variable. Then I'll use a wrapper class integer dot. There is an inbuilt library file. You can see a lot of library files are there. 2 binary string, 2 string, 2x string, 2 octal string. So you can use these inbuilt library files to do the conversion. And for this, I will pass the given number. What is our given variable? N. Okay. Similarly, if I want to convert it into hexadecimal. So again, I will use the same wrapper class integer. Why I'm using the integer wrapper class? Because we are converting the integer number to other number, right? So in the first line, we converted into binary. So now, suppose if I want to convert to hexadecimal, So again, I'll pass the number here. Similarly, string octal integer dot. So you can use two octal string, right? So these are the some helpful number conversion libraries which you can use. All these are inbuilt. So let us print the values. Binary number. Suppose I'll take the input as 15. So you can see the binary number is all ones. So it's a very handy library file to do the conversion. Okay. Suppose if you want to convert that back to the decimal, for example, I'll take int decimal. Now I want to convert it back to the decimal. So how will you do it? For example, here I converted this integer into octal, right, in this line. So let us convert that back to the integer dot. So there is some library file called as parseInt. So here you have to use this. Generally, parseInt is used to convert a given number into integer, right? Here we have to use the second library file where we are mentioning the radix. Radix is basically from which data format. Integer dot parseInt. Here in the first line, I have to mention the variable name. What is the variable name? Octal, and the radix is 8. Why 8? Because octal requires maximum number that you can represent using octal is 8, right? So we are converting this octal representation back to decimal. Okay. So let us try to do this. Octal number. So I'm entering 15 only. Okay. So what is the octal representation of 15? 17. And that 17 again I'm converting back to 15. So that number I'm passing here, OCP. So we are converting it back to integer. Correct. So please go through this library files because sometimes you require this become very handy while doing the number conversion. Let us go to the next one. So let us discuss one more problem that I already added. So there is a slight difference between the distinct element question and unique element question. So in distinct elements, we are printing the element that is duplicated. For example, 2, 1, 3, 4, 1. If these are the elements in the array, so what we are displaying is we are displaying 2, 1, 3, 4. That means we are displaying even the duplicated element. That means we are just printing them only once. Correct? Whereas the unique element question, you have to display 2, 3, 4. That means if the element is duplicated, you have to completely ignore it. Correct? That is unique element question. So only the unique elements you have to display. That is a slight difference is there. So don't get confused with that question. Okay. So let us declare an array. So all of you know how to declare array. So I'm using new int. Correct. Here I have to mention the size, whatever I'm entering. Then how do you read array elements for int equal to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus, correct? So whatever the elements that I'm reading from the user, that has to be stored in the array. C dot next to it. Correct. So this much everyone should be able to do easily. And in most of the platforms that all of you are working on, one common thing that you might have noticed is they will only give the required function and they will ask you to read the parameter, use the whatever the parameter that you are passing and complete the question. So generally they won't give the reading part. So that way, please try to solve the problems by separating the reading part and the implementation part. So to do that, obviously you require the function concept. You have to call the required function, whatever they are asking from the main class. And that class should be, that function should be able to do the job and return the value to the main class, correct? So whatever the logic you are learning, please try to separate the reading part and the implementation part, because that's the way the platforms are. Even in Moodle also I've given you, only implement the given function. Don't write any reading code. The reason I'm giving those kind of questions is so that you get practiced. So what is asked, you should be able to do that much only. So from now on, I'll try to separate the reading part and the implementation part so that you will get to know what elements, what parameters we are passing to the function and what we have to return back to the main function. So that clarity we should have, the data type, the return type clarity we should have. Okay. Suppose I'll call the find unique elements. Find unique elements method. For this, I'll pass the array. So as you observe, I am using the camel case syntax. So always follow the camel case syntax. So here obviously it is giving me the red color error because this function is not yet defined. So obviously, where is this function should be defined? After this main function, correct? Because again, this find unique elements function also should be within the main class unique elements, but it has to come outside the main function. So here always use private static void. So as you see already I have defined the method name. So if I just type find, I'll be able to get the function name. Then what does it accept? What is that I'm passing here? Array. And what is the return type? The array itself, right? So obviously I'll use the same return type, int array, correct? So in this way, you should be able to do the function concept. So since I'm not returning any value back to the main function, the return type is void. Static, you know why we are using static, because of not, otherwise what happens if I don't use static keyword, I have to create the object of unique elements, then I have to call this. So static is mandatory if you are learning the function concept. Here locally I'll create one more array. For example, I'll use count, right? So let me initialize the size 10,000. That means maximum. I'm assuming that I will store 10,000 elements in the array. So what is this question I told you? 21341. This is the input. Let us see in our model. The input size is 5, 03112. The output should be only 032. That means this duplicated values should not be printed. So that is the unique element program that you should understand. So the duplicated value should not be printed at all. And if the value is repeated multiple times, here say 1 is repeated 5 times. So obviously there is no unique element because all of them are repeated. So this extra condition I've added because if there is no unique element at all, so you have to print no unique element because all of them are same. At least one separate unique element should be there. So in this case, no unique element. So for this, we use the concept of count array. So I'm giving this hint so that you can follow this kind of approach for the different problems. Many people are using this approach. Okay. So let us use the for loop. I'll use the enhanced for loop. For example, I'll save the index name as num and our array name is count. Correct. What we are passing here, this one, our array name is array only. So this array name have to take it as a reference, right? So this enhanced for loop I'm using. Whatever the values that are coming from this array that I'm accessing one by one. Then this count array that we have created here, for that I will do count plus count of num plus plus. So basically what we're trying to do here, can anyone tell me? Is what is that we are doing here? The array elements, right? So basically I want to check how many times that particular number is repeated in the array, correct? So let us try to trace this. Suppose if the input is 5, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4 is my array values. So I'm creating one more count array, then passing that count for that count array. First number is what? 2. So 2 index. How many times 2 is repeated? So initially it is 0. By default, the array initializes the value to 0. So count of 2 plus plus we are doing. So what is there in count of 2? Initially 0. So 0 plus plus if I do, it becomes 1. 1, right? Then similarly, next 1 is there. In count of array 1, it becomes 1. Then for 3, also 1. But for this position, I'm getting 1 again repeatedly. So already we have created the count of array of 1 whose value is 1 here. So that will be replaced with 2 because we are incrementing. Similarly for 4, 1. So this is our count array. Correct? For array elements, we are creating the count array. How many times that array element is repeated. So count array concept you can use for multiple problems. So 2 is repeated 1 time, 1 is repeated 2, 3 is repeated, 3 is only appearing once, 4 is appearing once. Correct? So that is the first step. We have to create the count of array elements. So once we created that, so what is the next job? Next job is easy. The question is what? We should print only the unique elements. Only if the count value is 1. If the count value is more than 1, we should not print it. So you can use one more for loop for int num. So for original array, we have to check how many times the count array is coming. So if count of number, whatever the number that we are checking is equal to 1, correct? So what I'm trying to do here, if for the array element, only if the count value is 1, then only we will print that value. I will be print based on the index variable num, and I want each element to be printed with space, correct? So you can add space. Only if the count is 1, we have to print it. If the count is not 1, once the loop is over, correct? Once the loop is over, suppose here we should not print after the for loop, after the for loop. Or you can print here, else is not required. Okay. So what I'm getting, 2, 3, 4 I'm getting. So this obviously is coming, can make the change. Can anyone tell me? Obviously, I'm getting the output 2, 3, 4 and no unique element. So I don't want to print this, right? So I want to print this only when none of the elements are repeated. What could be the possible solution? Anyone? Yeah, because in test case, I've given positive numbers on. So as of now, Don't worry about the negative numbers because count array we are incrementing because we are incrementing it to plus one. So obviously it won't work for negative numbers. So what is the change I have to do? Should I put else or not? If I put else, what will happen? If I put else, correct? Somebody suggested while else. Okay. So just think about it. Give me suggestion. So whenever I'm asking the doubts, try to understand and try to dynamically give the responses. So how will you overcome this problem? You understood what I want? So this has to be printed only when why we use private. See, private is basically this should not be accessible from outside package. By default, it is private. Okay. So if you make it as a public, even the outside packages can access this particular method. So as of now, understand that private is necessary to make it hidden within the given package. So that is a concept of encapsulation abstraction. So we have to enable visibility only within the function, only within the given package. So for that purpose, you can use private. But even if you make it as public also, there is no issue here because I am working only within a single package. So for this particular problem, whether you give private or public, there is no problem, correct? But in general, what is the requirement? It should be hidden from the outside access. That's the way. Yes, you can use public. Break condition inside if sir, correct. So where I have to put the break condition? Use break condition inside if. Okay, let me put break here. So there are if I put break here, only first element will be printed. So again, this is not a solution. So just a small extra additional test case that I've added. So in your hacker rank, you won't find this test case. All that they're asking is only print the unique elements. But this no unique element, I've added extra. Even in Moodle also, you find that correct here. If all the elements are same, then how will you handle that? What is that you need to introduce extra? Anyone else? Think about it. So these are all small test cases that I'm giving. So already the logic is there. You just need to think about how to print that additional test case. Take an int b. After that, change it in if statement. Okay. After for loop, if b equal to 0, print null. Okay, very good. So basically, you should always try to use the flag concept. So I always told about this flag. So flag means you can just counter variable kind of, true or false kind of variable. So flag equal to 0, like Satvik suggested. So instead of b, I'm making it as a flag. So whenever we find the count value 1, right, change it in if statement. If count of num equal to 1, we'll print it. Then we will change that flag value to so 1 here. Then after for loop, if flag value is still 0, then print no unique element. If count of num equal to n, this is also fine. Okay, so let's first try this one. If flag equal to 0, right? So as you can see, now we are getting 2, 3, 4 as the answer. So since I want all of them on the same line, you can use print function instead of println. So 5, 2, 1, 3, 4, 1. Correct? So now I am not getting this no unique element because we have checked with the flag variable. So let us try all elements same. Again, so here why I am getting 5 times, because this is within the main for loop. So this has to be outside the for loop. Correct? Okay. So this is one approach. Harsha is suggesting some other approach. Try to do this and let me know if it works. Understood? So just extra test cases, you should be able to understand how to overcome the simple problems. Correct? So this can be easily done using count array. So we are creating a count array for the original elements of the array, and whenever the count array value is greater than 1, we don't print that. If it is 1, we print it and set the flag value to 1. So if the flag value is not yet modified, that means if it is originally 0 as it is, means there is no unique element. Because this if condition will be true only if the count value is equal to 1. If it is greater than 1, we don't enter this if condition. So flag value remains 0. Correct? So this kind of interaction is important. Good, Satvik. So try to similar questions are there based on this approach. Now, based on this hint, try to solve the remaining questions. Duplicate number is same as your distinct element question, right? So you have to find out only the duplicate numbers, store it in duplicate number. What is the duplicate number in the given array? That you have to find out. Then find all duplicates. Again, fourth and fifth are 90% same. Here, what you are doing is we are creating a separate list, correct? So whenever the element is duplicated, we have to store that in a separate list. Instead of setting the flag value, we have to copy that value into the another list. Then that list we have to print. So the total number of duplicate elements in the given array. So one problem leads to multiple ways, right? So distinct, unique, duplicate, find, all these are based on the single approach only. Just here and there you have to modify. Okay. Then sixth question, I'll give you the hint. What is that sixth question? Did I discuss this in the last session? Subarray left right sum. So just a simple approach here. So this is the given input, right? 3 is the total number of elements. So 166 are the elements. Then for each index, we have to do the left sum minus right sum. Okay. For the first value, which is 1, there are no elements towards left side. Right side, there are 2 elements, that is 6 and 6. So that becomes 12. So we have to subtract left with right. So 12 minus 0, because right side there are no elements. So the output will be 12. So for the first index, the 1 has to be replaced with 12. So left sum minus right sum. So that is done. For the second index, which is 6, left sum is 1, right sum is 6. So left minus right, that is left minus right. So irrespective of the order. So in this case, 6 minus 1 you have to do. So you should not do 1 minus 6. Okay. Left sum minus right sum. So that's why I've given absolute sum. So you have to do the absolute sum. If the difference is negative, convert it into positive value and print. Okay. So irrespective of which number is greater, left sum might be greater or right sum might be greater. Okay. So I've given the hint here. So left sum minus right sum you have to do. Similarly, for at index 2, left sum is 7, right sum is 0. So 7 minus 0 is 7. So this entire array is replaced with 12, 5, 7. So what could be the approach that you will follow for this question? So I've given the hint here. Please go through the hints. For a few questions, I would have given the hint. So you have to use multiple loops. First thing is you have to, for the given index, you have to call two functions. Okay. For each element in the array, you have to call two functions. So what is the job of those two functions? The first function will calculate left sum. Second function will calculate right sum. Okay. So obviously, for each index means, obviously you have to use for loop for I equal to 0, I is less than n, whatever, right? So you will call the left sum function, for which you have to pass the array index, correct? Up to that point, right? So left sum means up to that particular index. Then total number of elements. Right sum, how will you calculate? What about right sum? Anyone? What is that right sum function should accept? Left sum, you have to calculate array and okay, up to index I you can pass. For right sum, what you need to pass? Array I n. So what I'm trying to do here is left sum will go up to that particular index, whatever index I've given. So this left sum again will calculate the elements, sum of the elements from I equal to 0 up to that particular index. I is less than the given index, whatever we are passing from here, correct? Whereas right sum will do what? Right sum will start from I equal to whatever the index I'm passing, index plus 1, correct? This index plus 1, then I is less than n. Because for each element, suppose 166 is the elements, initially this will calculate left sum means up to this point only it will do, right? Because there is no left value. So obviously the sum will be 0. Whereas for right sum, I'll pass this index plus 1 from here up to n. So I have to do this sum, correct? So once that is done, what is pending remaining? We have to do the left minus right. So whatever the value this left sum returns, we will store in some other variable called as left array. This value will store in some other variable called as right. Then you have to do left minus right. But before doing this left minus right, you have to be very careful. You have to take the absolute value. Why absolute value? Because we are ignoring the negative values. So even if the right value is lesser than the left value, we have to still consider it as a greater value. So we have to take the absolute value, correct? So left minus right. So this is the implementation that you guys need to follow and try to complete this question. So for each element in the given array, try to call two functions. One will calculate the left sum, another will calculate the right sum, store that in the left and right variable, then uh, put that in this L and R, take the absolute value. So once you calculate this absolute value, obviously you have to, finally what you are creating is a new array, right? So you are creating a new array. In the new array, you have to store 12, then 5, then 7. So you're not printing the value one by one. So the better approach is store all of them in separate array. So whatever the value that you are calculating, your absolute value, store that in the new array. So take the resultant array. In that resultant array, start I value from 0, then keep on storing the whatever the index value you are getting into resultant of array. Then print that final array separately. Okay. So in that way, you can try to complete this question. So simple question, approach you need to understand. Once you understand the approach, implementation becomes easy. So what we require in the initial stages, trying to discuss with each other the logic. Okay, what is the best logic? Once we got the logic, then we need not worry about the code. So most lot of students will waste a lot of time on thinking about the logic only. They will waste a lot of time trying very complicated approaches. But through the discussions, through the multiple problem solving, you will get this clarity. Once you get the approach, try to stick on to that approach and modify here and there. Definitely you'll get errors, but you should not panic when you're getting errors. So make sure that whatever the approach you are following, stick to it. Whenever you get errors, try to solve the errors and see where you're going wrong and try to modify the approach whatever you're learning. So these kind of ideas you need to be able to develop, means obviously you'll get to know, you'll be able to solve a lot of problems. Then only we'll be getting the better clarity on these kind of approaches. Okay. So try to do this one also. So remaining all are 2D questions. I think I've discussed 2D question also. So try to complete them by Friday. A lot of people are asking to extend the dates also, but please stick to the whatever the deadline dates I am giving, because this is the time to be very dedicated. There is no negligency allowed here. You can ask your seniors what kind of action they are taking if they don't follow the deadlines. So don't request me for extending the deadlines. If you can do it, do it. Otherwise, leave it. There is no force for anybody. Those who are doing it, they will go ahead. Otherwise, there is always a second chance. Okay. Yes. So next, I wanted to start the array list. Array list I've already started. Okay. So already I've introduced you the collections, hash set, hash map, and hash set. But I want to start once again from the scratch so that you guys know what kind of library files are there in those collection framework, and how you can utilize them to do the problem solving. So the one difference that you should understand between the array, normal array, and the array list that you need to know. So today we are going to learn about array list basics. Okay, array list. So what is the difference between the array list and arrays? Array list is dynamic array, correct? It is a dynamic array. So in normal array, what we do? We create the array, right? We create the array, we mention the size, and that's it, right? So the size is fixed here. But in many problems, the size may not be mentioned, right? So they will only read as many elements as you want. There is no fixed size for the array. That time, obviously, your regular array won't work. You have to use this collection, that is array list. Okay. So let us understand the basics of array list. What are the functions? What is the operations you can do on this array list? There definitely this will be helpful in your problem solving. Okay, so first thing is syntax, how to create the array list, correct? So array list, you have to use the data type. Then in the angular bracket, you have to pass the parameter. Suppose I want to create the string array list, right? So array list of string. Then I have to give the name of the array list. So this is the object that is referring to the name of the array list. Then new, already it is giving me the suggestion, new array list. Okay. So a lot of things I'll be discussing one by one. So please listen to it carefully. So array list of strings E1 equal to new array list. So this is the syntax to create the array list. Okay. Next thing is insert operation. So how will you insert the element into the array list? Correct. So you have to use the name of the array list, that is object. Then you have to use, yeah, it takes time, Pratik. So don't get panic. Don't cry. Be professional student. Okay. So it's not one day work. That's why I'm asking you guys to start sincerely from now on. Because for myself, I'm doing continuous learning. So sometimes it takes a lot of time to be perfect in whatever you're doing. But you should not get demotivated. So it's always process. You have to stick to the process. Learn from the people, see a lot of videos, right? So I always watch one or the other videos to get the clarity. So C1 dot add, right? So let me add some values to it. So this is the insert operation. So object name dot add. So to insert the elements into the array. So unlike your normal array, you have to use the add function here. A lot of inbuilt functions are there. So if you want to print the array list, so all that you need to do is just print it with the object name. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, we are printing the original array list as it is in that format. So normally the array list will be printed in the square brackets, right? And this comma and everything will come automatically. So this is how to create the array list. Okay. There is something called as ensure capacity. So all of you should know this, ensure capacity. So this is important. It's not that much important, but you should know what does it do. So increases the capacity of this array list instance if necessary to ensure that it can hold at least the number of elements specified by the minimum capacity element, right? So basically, since the array list is already dynamic, why this function you can ask me, correct? So array list dynamically expands even though we are crossing this 10 also, we can still store 11th element, 12th element in the array list. But still, what is the need of this ensure capacity? We should have a clarity, correct? Because if you don't use this internally, it will do a lot of reallocations basically. As and when you increase or add the elements, it has to readjust the size, it has to readjust the memory. So it will do a lot of overhead in background. So to avoid that, if you make that ensure capacity as in this case 10, so up to 10, it doesn't do any reallocation dynamically. So it treats it like a normal array, correct? So sometimes if your range of working with the elements is less, you can fix the size of the array list to certain elements. That means at least 10 elements it will support. Only when it crosses the 10, that time it will do the reallocation, correct? If you don't do this, now if I am trying to insert the fourth element, for example here, so while I'm doing this background, it will be doing a lot of reallocation process, right? So internally, it will put a lot of overhead, and again, in turn, it will impact the performance of the project or whatever the program you're doing. So to avoid this, generally people use this particular approach, ensure capacity, but you need not to do it every time. In real time, I'm telling this. So ensure capacity is the one thing that converts your array list into normal array list, normal array. with a fixed size. Okay. So if needed, you can use it. Otherwise, it's not compulsory. So in this case, what I'm doing, I'm keep on adding the elements. As you see, the in the order in which I've added, the elements are updated. So red, green, yellow. Then the next one I've added is black. Suppose what if I want to insert at a specific position? That also you should be knowing, right? Suppose you want, if I want to insert the next element at particular position, then you can use this particular method, add int index string element. So I can mention the index position. Suppose if I want to insert at second index, then here I can give the value. So as you can see, this orange is updated at second position, right? So this is one more way of adding the elements into the array list based on the position, right? Now, how to fetch the values? That is the next question, right? So how to fetch the value from the array list? Okay. Suppose if I want to print the value directly, that is there at the position second element at second position. Suppose I want to print the element at second position, right? So again, for everything you have to use the reference object name. A lot of functions are there, as you can see. So c1 dot get. So get function you can use, and for that you have to pass the index position. Correct. So what is the element at second position? Orange. Since array list also starts from 0, 0, 1, 2. So I'm getting orange as the output. So all these library files you should be able to know so that you can use them whenever you require in your logics. Next, how to search, right? The next question is how to search if an element is present or not. Correct. You can use if condition if c1 dot contains. So there is a contains method. But if I want to check if there is a element name with yellow, correct? If it is present, I want to print element is present. Okay. What does contains function do? Returns true if this list contains the specified element, right? So I'm getting the element is present as the output. So all these are important basics of array list. Everyone should be able to know. Then suppose if I want to sort the entire array, for example, I want to sort them in particular order, right? So for that, for sorting the array list, you can use collection framework. Okay, you can use collection framework. So collection is the framework. How to use that as it is collections dot. Suppose if you want to sort them in the ascending order, you can use the sort method followed by the object name of the array list. Okay, sorted array list is. Okay. So as you can see, it is sorting based on what value? Based on the alphabetical order, right? So black, green, orange, red, and yellow. Suppose if I insert one more element, for example, c1 dot add, right? So it will compare the first two characters. Then since they are both of them are same, it goes for the third character, right? So since A is coming before O, so we are giving the priority to this black, right? So basically in the alphabetical order, natural order, it is sorting. Similarly, you can, if you want to do in the reverse order, for that also there is an inbuilt function reverse C1. Now we are getting the output in the reverse order. right? Then sometimes they will ask you to create a sublist of the original array. So for that, you can create one more list, and obviously the in the bracket, whatever the data type you are writing has to match with the original array. Suppose if I'm creating the sublist, you have to use the object name of the array list c1 dot. So there is an inbuilt function called as sublist. For that, you have to pass two values, from index and to index here. So sublist c1 dot sublist. Suppose I want to create a sublist of 2 to 4. Yes, correct, correct. So if you have alphabets and numbers, then it will check the ASCII values. So let's see that one also. Very good question. C1 dot add. But since it is an array list of integer or string, we have to put that in double quotes. The value of 10. 10 is coming in the end, or you can comment like this. Output 10 is coming first based on the ASCII position. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is creating the sublist of the original array. And 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, except 4, right? So 2 to 4, if I say, including 2, excluding 4. So block is coming and green is coming, excluding this orange, right? These are a lot of library files are there. So similarly, you can use swap function collection dot. There is a swap, right? So you can pass the list. What is our list name? C1, comma. Suppose if you want to swap third element with fifth element, you can do that. Then there is a one more. I will just mention. If you want, you can try it later on. Then there is an add all method here. Suppose this one is used to, merge two array list. So basically, you are adding one array list with another array list by using add all method. That means whatever the elements that are there in C1 are merged into C2, correct? Then you can use isEmpty. Already you might be using C1 dot isEmpty, right? So isEmpty function, this will help you to check whether the array list is empty or not. Then if you want to remove, so you can have a C1 dot remove method, right? So you can remove based on the object or based on the index. So you can give any one value to this. Suppose if I want to remove the element directly, I can pass that object. Or if I want to mention the position, we can mention the position also, right? They're all some more library files which you can explore later on. Suppose if I want to print the array list using the normal for loop, then this is also very important. In some cases, they'll put this restriction. So you can use size method. So what does this size will do is calculate the size of the array list. Because it is dynamically updated, you don't know what is this count because nowhere you are reading the size of the array list, correct? Then inside this for loop, C1 dot size will help me to calculate the total number of elements in the array list. Then you can print each element using C1 dot get of index position, right? So here we are printing the each element of the array list on separate line. As you can see, the output, instead of printing all of them on the same line, we are getting on the separate line. So you should know all these different approaches because how we are printing the final output that matters. If you don't want to use this normal for loop, you can use the enhanced for loop also. Since our array list is storing the string data, the return type should be string and index name I, and where is our reference C1. That is our object name for the array list, right? So for the string I C1, what you can print is directly you can print the I value. So in this case also, you will get the each element printed on the separate line. So same output you can see, right? So both approaches you should know. So here we are using get I method. Here internally it is taking care. So here is I is corresponding or referencing the actual value. So there's one more important question I wanted to ask those who have studied or those who have not studied. It's a good way to learn. When type something, try to tell me what is the difference. So we already created the array list, right? So let me create another array list. String C2 equal to new array list. So here I use the return type as array list, correct? Here I use the return type as list. Does it a problem or does it work? Is it a problem or will it work? So anyone can interact and tell me. So is it always necessary to use the representation as array list, or I can just use the list? It works. So the roll number 93, can you give the exact reason why it works? Let's try to add the element and check if it works or not. Suppose CSC. Okay, so I'm getting the output here. So it's not an issue, but the syntactical differences you should understand. Here I used array list. Both are allocated as array list. Okay. Then what is the need of using list? Why can't I use array list always so that I can remember the syntaxes carefully? What cases we have to use this, or on what situations it will be helpful? That clarity we should have, right? So here I've used list, here I've used array list. What is the difference? Did anyone give attention to this, or if you have studied already in your syllabus? Anybody else? So what is basically list here? You can highlight here. An ordered collection, the user of this interface has a precise control over where in the list each element is inserted. The user can access the element by the integer index and search for element. Unlike sets, lists typically allow duplicate elements, right? So a lot of explanation is there. The list interface places additional stipulation. So you can go through this list, a lot of things are there. Using list, we can only override methods. If there are any specific methods in our list, we cannot use them. So, answer that I was expecting. In array list, there can be sub-array list. No, Ishwant, right? So this is a very important question that I used to ask myself, because when I was learning, in some textbooks they will use array list, in some textbooks they use list, right? So you should know when to use them, correct? In this case, I've used this as a list, right? In this case, I used as an array list. So basically, the reason, the advantage I'll mention, the advantage is we can convert into another type of list, correct? So what you studied is only array list. There are separate lot of types of lists are also there. correct? So it doesn't tie that particular implementation into one specific implementation, that is array list. So if you mention the data type as list, it is free to be converted into any other type. For example, uh, I've already created as a list of string c2 here. Now the same c2 I can convert it into for different type of lists are there. So I can convert that into linked list also, correct? Suppose if I try to do this for C1, can you see there is an error? C2 is the return type is list. What is the C1 return type? C1 return type is array list, correct? So if I'm trying to convert that C1 into linked list, I'm getting this error. What is the error? Required type is array list, provided is linked list. But if I use it for C2, I'm not getting any error. The reason is this particular C2 is acting like a generic list, correct? It is like, in order to put it into a simple words, C2 is open to play in any team. Simple. C2 is a player who can play in any team. He's like a, all-rounder, or you can say he can go and today he can play in one team, tomorrow he can play in another team. But C1 will only play in the team of Arraylist. C1 doesn't play in any other team, correct? So C1 is not dynamic, whereas C2 is dynamic. So in general, if you make any object as a list, it is free to convert it into another list, correct? It can be converted into another list as and when required. So it is not always array list basically. So at this line, what you did is object of C2. For the object of C2, you created the memory of array list. So you can store the data related to the array list. Later on stage, what you did here is you converted that array list into linked list. So in coming days, we will discuss linked list, how to create a linked list and all. But as of now, you can understand array list and linked list are two separate type of linked list. Okay. So similar to the void pointer switch. Yes, exactly. You can understand it that way. So like void pointer can be converted into any other data type. Similarly, list, if you make the return type, this object can be converted into any other list. So that's why they use this kind of syntaxes. So suppose if you want to restrict that to only array list, you can make it as array list. Now I'm getting error here because the return type is required type is only array list. That means this C2 can only store the or work with the functions of array list only. It doesn't support any other library files related to the linked list because the return type we have mentioned strict return type. So this is what you need to know. That's why the Java is very powerful in terms of abstraction and encapsulation. So this is a concept of abstraction basically. So if you put this array list, it becomes abstraction, right? Then if you make it as just a list, it becomes package, open package, right? So this is one thing I wanted to tell you. Whereas how to see the differences between the syntaxes, correct? So if you have clarity in this kind of syntaxes, the errors can be easily understood and you can easily solve and identify those errors. Moving on to the next one, so I'll take one more class. Okay. So sometimes what what they gave is they give the existing array and they ask you to convert that into array list. For example, let me create an array. So here I am giving the original values as it is. So this is a compile time initialization of our array. Now, suppose if they give the values like this, and if they expect you to convert this into array list, and later on you can dynamically update these values, right? So how will you do that? So obviously I'm going to use this list. Then obviously what type of data here I have is integer. So you have to mention integer in the angular brackets. Then I will use the object name as list one. Now you have to convert this existing array into array list, correct? So I will use the arrays library, inbuilt library. So arrays, and there is an inbuilt method called as list. Okay, so as list you can use arrays dot as list, and we have to pass the array name. What is our array name here? A. Okay, so required type is list integer provided list int. So again, so here, so let me use the data type as integer only. Okay, so what does this as list do? It creates a fixed size blocks. Okay, so fixed size backed by the specified array. So basically we are using as list to convert one array into another format. Or if you don't want to do this, directly you can pass the values. List of integer okay, arrays dot as list. I'll directly mention the values here. It's also possible. So you have predefined values that you are storing in this list too. Then later on, if you want to update it, you can do it because it increases dynamically. So this one thing you should also know. Thing is, let us try to one last example I will show you. Okay. So let us start oops concept. So obviously, in oops concept, what we learn class and object, right? We have to create a separate multiple classes, and as and when required, we can access the values or the member variables using the object. So I'll try to create a class called as students. Here I'll create some member variables. This is a user-defined class where it has two data members. So to create a user-defined class, what you have to do? Class keyword you have to use, the name of the class. Then I will use a constructor. See, I think whether I mentioned or not. Suppose if you want to, what is a constructor? Anyone tell me? What do you mean by the constructor? What is constructor? Because you might have already studied. Same method and class. Correct. Very good. Class name and constructor names. Okay, next question. What is the need of it? Or what does it do? What does it do? Okay, so it instantiates the object. In general, it initializes the data members, correct? When does it initialize the data members? As and when the object of the class is created, correct? So whenever you create the object of the class, the constructor gets called automatically, and using the constructor, we can initialize the values. So good that you know this basic. So let us try to create the constructor. So what is the syntax for the constructor? It has to be the name of the class as it is, and based on what I want to initialize, right? Since I want to initialize the data members, How many data members are there? Name and age. So we have to give two parameters to it: string name, comma int age. Correct. And here, what is the keyword I have to use? This dot name equal to name. This dot age equal to age. So what is this keyword is doing? For the next session, please learn this keyword in term. What is the difference between this keyword, static keyword, right? Final keyword, all these things I will be discussing. So since the data parameter names are same here, to refer the actual instance, we have to use the this keyword, correct? So to refer the current class member, we use the this keyword. Suppose if the name is different here, then we may not need this, right? Suppose if here instead of name, I have something else, capital name, then this new keyword is no need, right? So yeah, very good. So it refers to current object. So in this IntelliJ, to create the constructor, you need not to waste your time like this. So there are shortcut for this also. Suppose I'll press Alt Insert. So understand the shortcut here, what I'm typing. Keyboard shortcut to insert constructor, right? So what is the keyboard shortcut? Alt plus insert button. So Alt function key plus insert button. So see here, whenever I'm pressing Alt insert, I'm getting a lot of options here. So since I want to create a constructor, I'll select the first one. And it is asking me the choice. You want to create the constructor for single variable or both the variables. So I'll select both the variables by pressing control button. So I'll select both name and age, click OK. So as you can see, the constructor automatically appears here. So this clarity, if you have, then definitely you can use this kind of keyboard shortcuts to fast pace your learning, right? So I need not to type the constructor every time. Okay. Similarly, if I want to have a getter method, so anyone can you tell me what is getter and setter methods? They are also alternative for initialization. So setter method, suppose I want to create a setter method only for name. So I'll select only name. And what does it do? It also initializes the data member, but it is only initializing the name method, correct? So the inbuilt name, it is already appearing set name. And if I want to return some values from the data members, right? So getter method I will use. Suppose I want to return both the values. So it automatically creates two functions, public string get name, public int get age based on the return type. So creating the getter method and setter method is very easy in this kind of platforms, only when you have the clarity, because you know what you want to return, right? So definitely it helps you to fast pace your learning process, correct? So getter method and setter method is very easy to create in this kind of platform. Similarly, there are a lot of other functionalities. ToString is there, equals is there. So what does this ToString is doing is, it will automatically convert your members into actual, data type, because they are represented as the object. When you are trying to print these values, you can't directly print them, correct? You have to only access them using object. Suppose I don't want to use object every time, I will use the ToString method. So what does the ToString method does is, internally it will convert these values into corresponding the data type. And whenever I'm printing the values, I can directly call the object of this class student. So I can directly print the name and age without accessing them using getter method or constructor, right? So that is the advantage of ToString method. A lot of such features are there to learn the object-oriented programming, which you need to explore and learn, right? So this is how we need to create the class. So this is a student class. This is the get method, setter methods. Then the next question is, and see, obviously all these things should come inside your main class, that is student class. And this class has to be public. Suppose if I remove this, class is public. See, I'll get the error here. Why I'm getting the error here? Because class student is public should be declared in a file named as students.java. So this class is created inside the Arraylist class. What is my file name? Arraylist2.java. So whatever the main class name is there, that class has to be always public. Whatever user defined class you are creating inside that main class, they have to be just a classes without using the public keyword, right? That means in general, whatever the name of the class you are giving, the file name and the name of the class that you are giving, that class should be public. All the remaining methods should be by default private. Okay. So you will be facing a lot of such issues when you are working with multiple classes in OOPS. So you should have a clarity on what is the mistake that you are getting, right? Now, we have created this class. Then we have certain setter method and getter methods also. So let us create an array list. Okay. Now what I'm trying to do here is I'm creating an array list of not integer, not string. I'm creating an array list of students. So just 2 more minutes, I'll wind up. Array list of students. Object name is st. I'm giving new array list. Okay. So till now you saw the array list of strings and integer. So here what I'm passing here is I'm passing the class name. Now what does this array list do is it will store all the objects references of the student class, correct? For each object, how many data members, everything it will store inside this array list. So that's why for working with the object oriented concept, your normal array will not be helpful. You have to use the array list concept. Okay. Next, what I want to do is, can anyone tell me how will you create the object of this class? How will you create the object of this class student? Right? The class name followed by the object name, then new student. See, automatically it is suggesting me the name of the class with the two values because I've already created the constructor with the two parameters. So new students, right? So here I have to pass two values. For example, I'll pass some name for the student, then the age I'll pass, right? Similarly, I'll create one more student. Okay. So I've created two students. Now what happens at this point? Will it be initialized automatically or not? So we'll be automatically initializing this particular objects using the constructor. Now, this is the automatic initialization. Now what I want to do is initialization is done. Now we have to add this object into array list. At this point, what we did is, we only initialize the members of student class. Correct. But what is the next process? Next process should be adding them to array list, correct? You have to add them to array list. So how will you add them to array list? We already created the array list here. The object name is st. So st dot add. For this, I have to pass the object of the students. So you can see already I'm getting the suggestion. So first object is s1. I'll add that. Then the second object is s2. I'll add that. Correct. So now let us print them. How will you print the values? Student data. Correct. So let us use the enhanced for loop. So obviously the return type should be what? Students class, because all those values belongs to students class. Then I will use the index variable I. Then the object reference of array list is st. So till now we used to use a string, integer and all. Here I'm using student as the data type. So how will you print the value? S out. Suppose I want to print the student name. How will you print the student name? s dot s1 dot, or if you want to, you're using the index variable, right? So I dot. See, a lot of options are there. If I want, I can access them directly, or I can access them using get name. So let us try to access using name. So I'm able to print the only student name using name. Suppose if it is a private variable, then I have to use the get name. So get name is also giving me the output, but let me make this name as private, and I'll try to access this name directly. So understood what is error I'm getting? Name as private access. So whenever a member variable is a private in a class, you can't access them directly using any object reference. The only way to access them is using the getter method. So what is our getter method name? Get name. So using get name, I can directly access them, right? So though the member name is private, right? So all these basics you should be able to understand carefully. Suppose if I want to directly print the object, so what will happen if I directly print the object? So let me print st, right? So I'm already getting the output like this. So who is helping me to do all this? Students is coming, name Virat Kohli, age 34, comma, again students, name Rohit Sharma, age 35 is coming. So who is helping me to do this? This toString method. So let us remove this toString and try to print the output. Okay, let me delete this. So what is the output I'm getting here? Session 7 dot students, session 7 dot students, something hash code. We call it as hash code. So the reason is whenever you are printing the direct object of the array list for any given class, you won't be able to get the original data. Instead, you will be printing hash value, right? So to avoid this, what is the only way? Use the toString method. The toString method internally will convert all the member variables into actual representation based on the data type. And using that toString, you need not to worry about direct printing, correct? So toString is a very important method that is useful to print all the values. You can customize this also. Suppose you don't want this students, you can customize this, not an issue. Okay, so now I'm getting the output as the array list format. Within that array list, I'm getting name, age in this particular representation. So here what we did in this question, what we did in this program, we combined array list concept with user defined class, correct or not? User defined class name is students. And what we did, we stored the objects of students inside array list, right? For that, what are the things we did? We used constructors, toString method, or getter. Suppose if you don't want to initialize using constructor, you can use setter method also. Suppose what is the setter method I have here is set name, right? So I can use the object reference student is 3 equal to students, right? The name is students. Students is 3 equal to new student Suppose here I am not using, right? So here I'll get the error because if I want to create the object like this, right? Obviously it won't work because I mentioned the constructor that it has to accept two arguments, right? So if you want to accept this also, you have to give an empty constructor, right? So here you don't need to do anything. You can keep it empty. Now what I will do is s3 dot, I will call the set name. Here I will call some other name, right? So this also you can do. So within the same code program, I have two constructor. One is a empty constructor, or we can call it as a default constructor. Another is a parameterized constructor. So we just created the object of the students. Then using set name, I initialize the values. Let me print that name. S3 dot get name. Okay, so I'm able to do that also. So one thing that we learned is we can initialize using constructor directly, or we can initialize it using the setter method. We can print directly using the object reference using toString method, or you can print using the getter method. So these are the basics of object-oriented programming. Everyone should be able to understand how to create the class, how to access them using getter method, setter method, and constructor, and how to modify it internally based on our requirement. So we will continue this object-oriented programming in coming sessions. Few more questions I will be solving based on this. But before that, I wanted to cover this. What is constructor? What is getter method, setter method? Please practice once again and try to combine them with the array list concept. So this is the process that everyone should follow. Array list you should create. Object of the class you should create. Then using the object, array list object, you have to add the individual class object into that particular array list. Okay. Then how to automatically create this setter method, getter method using the inbuilt features, alt insert. This also you can use it. Fine. So I'll try to meet you guys in the next session, that is on Friday. We'll be covering few more topics based on array list. Then I'll go to the object-oriented programming. We'll cover some more topics based on object-oriented programming, few more problems based on hash set. So at max, whatever is possible in these 4 or 5 sessions, we'll try to cover that. Okay, so I'll see you in the next session.